Welcome to the Human Size Podcast. I'm Zach.
I'm Crystal, and today we're going to be talking about the awkward and difficult dynamic of having healthy male-female relationships.
Like always, we have producer Adam joining us. Hello.
Hey, Adam. Glad to have you with us, especially for this new first episode in the season that's very awkward, so it's a good one to wet your feet on.
Yeah. We've had great personal health and growth being friends, Crystal and I, and that's why we wanted to discuss this because, there's dynamics at play that, like, for me, for other male relationships, both I don't need to worry about, but also there's some benefits that's missing when I don't have any sisters in Christ to go along with.
Yeah, it's also like narrowing when we don't have the option to have healthy friendships with the opposite gender. It narrows you to actual people that God has put into your life to be refined and interact with, which I think is the extreme on one side, right? And we know there's extremes on one side where it's unhealthy, and it's an awkward thing to talk about. Like, I know it's probably awkward. It is awkward for us to talk about it because of all the reasons that those relationships can be difficult and how they've been treated in church, in work, in different areas. So hopefully this will be helpful. If at the very least it will be awkward.
That's right. We are good at that.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so I don't know where you land on a spectrum as you're listening to this, whether you are someone that has just same-sex friendships and you don't think you should have opposite gender friendships, or you'd have no boundaries, which is another danger. And so you're going to fall somewhere in that line, and just know that, as we discuss this, we don't even maybe land in exactly the same spot.
Yeah, it's really more about character and having a healthy dynamic than rules, right? I think. Yeah. And so that's what we're going to talk about. I mean, there are some guardrails that we'll talk about that are always a good idea. But let's dive in. Like, what is a healthy relationship in the friendship realm for women and men?
We're going to start with a minor question.
That's how I do it.
I think it's that brotherly, sisterly love that comes out. And that is, at least that's how I would define it. And I know that's still a broad statement. And depending of your family of origin, those friendships look very different.
And I mean, to be honest, they're like with any friendship and relationship circles, there's a lot of dynamics to this. Because like in our friendships in general, we often only have a few really close friends, right? And then we have, another layer of friends that are close, but maybe not that close, and then acquaintances. And I think that's the same with male-female friendships. They're going to be in the same, and there's different, I think, parameters and rules on what layer of friendships you have with people. Like we're pretty close friends, but we've worked together. You've been a pastor at my church. Our families interact with one another, and we've done a lot of work to be healthy personally, and we have boundaries in that. Yeah. And I have a lot of friends that are of the opposite gender males that are in different levels of that, and there's different guardrails and different things that make that healthy, right? Yeah. And some of that's just friendship in general. So,
yeah. I think, and a good place to start if you're looking for where should those boundaries be, if you're married, that's a great spot to go to your spouse and talk about what boundaries make them feel protected, what boundaries they prefer. And I don't know about you, but throughout my marriage, I was thinking about this, and those boundaries have been different depending on where my personal health is. My wife, Rachel, when my personal health wasn't great, the box would have been much smaller, wisely, that I could have relationships in.
Yeah, I think that's a good starting point in general. If you're in a committed if you're in a married relationship at all, is to make sure that relationship's healthy. So if that relationship, if you can't decide what those healthy boundaries are, you have different perspectives that are causing tension, or you unveil any kind of unhealth, working on that is step number one. You shouldn't be worrying about friendships outside, especially friendships with the opposite gender, if you don't have a healthy core relationship. Yeah,
it's so true. And as you're saying that, Crystal, I was also thinking we'd be remiss if we didn't say if you're struggling with sexual addiction, which culture says that's a high percentage of males. I want to say upward of over 80%, and now it's a high
It's like 90%. It's over 90%.
Yeah.
Over 90%, and of females, I think it's over 50% now. Is that accurate? It's around there at least.
Yeah, which is rarely talked about. And when you say sexual addiction, you're not talking about necessarily having affairs all the time which is part of that, like physical affairs, but that's pornography and interacting with any kind of sexual material outside of marriage. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And if you find yourself in that spot, you're going to be messing with fire with these male-female relationships. And so I know. So I would say if you're struggling with that, there's lots of different ministries out there. Conquerors Ministry is one.
Pure Desire.
Pure Desire, yeah.
Is one.
Pure Desire.
And is Mending the Soul related to those, which is, it's a female mostly, I think, I forget the name of that. Anyway, Mending the Soul is related to some other resources.
That's a place you can start because, God designed us to be family units. Like this brotherly, sisterly love is something that should be happening in a healthy dynamic. But as we're saying those percentages, we live in an unhealthy world, and we all have different levels of unhealth inside of us.
Yeah.
And so it's good just to acknowledge that start there.
Yeah. I'll even take it back one step further for all relationships, but especially this conversation is in your own marriage, in your own relationship with other people, making sure you're healthy first, like taking care of your part of it. I think even in the marriage dynamic that gets overlooked often. That's hard for marriages to get healthy when each individual's not dealing with their own unhealth, with themselves, with God, with a counselor, with a pastor, whatever that may be.
And even other things such as and you were talking about the marriage dynamic. My wife is not this way, so I feel like I can say that publicly, but if she struggled with insecurity to a heavy degree, part of loving her well would be that I would pull back in those male-female friendships. That would just be part of me loving as a husband.
Yeah.
And so, but I don't have that dynamic.
Yeah.
Thankfully. And so friendships, Crystal and I's friendship has been a healing thing for me. Yeah. It's healed some sister wounds. It's healed some wounds even in how I operate male to female. It's been a great thing for me. And so we're definitely pro the relationship if it can be done in a healthy way.
Yeah, same for me. And I could say that for a lot of my relationships, my healthy relationships, especially within my church, where there was this deep, what I consider a God-oriented love that has healed me in my father wounds, my wounds with other males, and just in general has been a freedom giver. But it has been done in a walk of health.
Yeah.
And I will take us pit stop here real quick because we're talking a lot about married people, and I just want to address like those who are not in married relationships. This is still applicable that it's really important to have health yourself and have healthy relationships with the opposite gender because you're for their good and for yours. So it's not like a free reign if you're not married. I think it still starts with health and what's a healthy dynamic that you're living in, that with your impulses, with your relationship health, your mental health, whatever you want to call it, but also how you treat others and how you value them.
Yeah. And so if you're single and you have these male-female relationships, I highly recommend someone that's holding you accountable, that you're having the conversations with. Because, one of the things that my wife is for me is she'll ask me what's going on. So before Crystal and I did a podcast together, I talked with my wife, you talked with your husband, and hey, are you okay with this? And we did that on Zoom, and we were in separate rooms. Yeah. Well, now that we're in the same room, I had another conversation, and I know you had another conversation. And so it's, are you comfortable with that? And, Rachel was like, well, is it just you guys? Who else is there? And
right, yeah.
And those aren't, because those are good questions. Those aren't ones that are not trusting me as a man and not trusting Crystal as my friend. And so they are just solid questions.
Just healthy questions. Yeah. And again, those apply especially to a marriage relationship and honoring your spouse, but also outside of marriage.
Yes.
If like our son just started dating, he's 17, and there's been a lot of conversation around there. There's been a lot of conversation about honoring the other person, making sure you're clear of what your intentions are, because people, have desires and want to be loved and all that kind of stuff. But having accountability, I think it helps in that any situation, in our situation, having a community of people that know us both, that know what our desire of having good character is and have interaction and see. So we're not, with our relationship, anybody's relationship, just having people that are aware and a part of that.
Yeah. And then what do you not do? What do you not talk about? So I'm not going to talk about I'm not going to say negative things about my wife to my female. Well, I'm not going to say them to any of my friends. I'm going to try to avoid that at all
Right.
costs. And if I'm wanting advice on it, I'm more going to lean into my male friendships than female. It's just
as
a boundary. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's just certain like emotional, I think, levels. And I think it's intuitive. You know what those sensitive things are. There's certain things I wouldn't talk to one of my male friends about.
Yeah.
That I just feel that. I feel the vulnerability. And, I need to go to one of my husband, or if he's not the one that's appropriate, to one of my female trusted friends. There's some interesting lines that get blurred with that. I think just in the church where like pastors are often mostly male. Right. And it feels like, which has sometimes led to situations too, but it is like that gets blurry in the church. Just a side note.
Yeah. No, it's much more complicated than I think.
Yeah.
Than we give it credit for. And then there's other ones like we're not going to go out to lunch together alone,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's a boundary. And what I guess we're saying with these things is talk.
Yes.
Communicate. Don't have things hidden. Those are dangers no matter what. When hiddenness is coming into any part of the equation, no matter what relationships are going on, at least in my life, that has not led to something positive.
Yeah, and I think just let's go to another awkward level. If you're in a place where you're seeking out time with somebody and that you're not something you wouldn't feel comfortable sharing with someone else, or you feel that conviction, deal with that. It doesn't mean you have to go to the extreme and say, I'm never going to have a relationship with the opposite gender. Again, go back to deal with that health, go to a trusted person, figure out what's going on. There's probably a deficiency going on inside of you, something that no one else would ever feel anyway. But like just to be self-aware of where you are and your desires and how you're living those out.
Yeah, self-honesty, I think, is what you really need to do is make sure that you are self-aware enough that you can actually be honest with yourself in what it is that you're choosing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And so honest with yourself, having accountability outside. Because the moment you were saying that, Adam, I totally agree with what you're saying. And then I was thinking of that scripture that who can know the heart? It's deceitfully wicked in all its ways. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking we just need to be honest with that. We need to be honest with ourselves, and in our honesty, know I don't know what's going on in my heart.
Yeah.
To the full extent.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and I think we can, if we react to it in a way that is either hiddenness or avoidance or just however we might deal with it instead of actually diving into it, like we may misjudge what's going on too, and then make a reaction that's just makes more of a mess. Like why am I having that reaction? Why am I having that struggle?
Totally. And I was thinking, Crystal, as we're having these conversations, like let's say I was saying, oh, this is probably a conversation we shouldn't have, or I'm laying a boundary down, or you're doing that with me. These need to be done in a gentle way, because in our culture, at least for me, there's been times where maybe a boundary was appropriate, but the way the person did it made me feel like I don't want my female friends to feel dangerous,
right,
or that there is something wrong with them and why I can't do something. And so as you have these conversations with each other, just know that that's part of the dynamic that we need to really watch out for and just be honest with, because it's not someone else's problem that we can't have a boundary in a certain way.
I think that's a great thing to bring up, to say, like, if whatever we're walking through, to own it, to deal with it ourselves, and not to assume that other people are the problem or put that whatever that is on other people, because that does do a lot of damage. And unless somebody is aggressively pursuing you and doing something that you have to get, like, those are obvious, but a lot of times people get villainized or treated poorly because of other people's problems, and that's not fair. Yeah. That causes the hurts that then other relationships help you heal from.
Right.
Yeah, which is just a cycle if you don't have the healing, right? Because it just makes hurt, and it makes difficulty, and it makes distance. And I think that is why, I think what we're talking about, to summarize in the way I'm hearing it, like, is our health, our personal health is what allows us to have healthy relationships, and healthy relationships bring healing. And we need that closeness and healing in the right times with the right people, as God has brought us together to bring that healing. And if we have distance, whether it be hiddenness or inappropriate extremes of how we deal with one another, then we're actually missing those opportunities to heal as the connected collaborative body of Christ. We say that a lot, God and Christ, because we're believers. And if you're listening to that, you probably know it, but I just want to note that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and we're always going to be striving for health, but this area is about as clear as mud as we've been talking about.
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
It is an art. It's not a science. And I wish there was like black and white principles to live by, but most of it there is not. There, and I found that most of the rich things in life are more that way.
Yeah, right. It comes back to more than rules or a set format. It comes back to character and making healthy decisions and seeking personal health and living in that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we said a lot of the negatives are a lot of, parameters and stuff, but like, what are some of the positives about like male-female friendships if we have healthy perspective?
Yeah, I think in a healthy perspective, one of the ways that here's my selfishness coming forward, but it's totally true. I have learned about my wife by being friends with you, Crystal.
Yeah.
So like how you respond to something, or you tell me something and it's different than the husband-wife relationship. So I'm able to hear it in a different way. And so I'm able to love my wife and my daughters better because of it.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's the same here. It gives me that perspective of people who understand it better and are able to share it with me in a way that comes from a different direction. I think it allows us, like I said in the beginning of the podcast, to have relationship with people that have similarities in certain walks of life without having to disregard all of it because of the danger or the harsh boundaries that maybe aren't as healthy as they could be.
Right. It rounds out the picture. I mean, if it was just supposed to, as a guy, it was just supposed to be a guy leading on his own separately, well, the story of Genesis would have went down very, very differently.
Yeah.
but there was that co-airing and leading, and I know having female friends has given me a much more rounded perspective to my life.
Right.
Instead of just going and hunting and killing something and
right.
Being off in that direction, it's given more fullness.
Yeah. And that's a great picture of not just friendships, but having both male and female perspectives in every room, different perspectives in general. It's important to have in different spaces.
Yeah. And I think, not just the perspective of vision, but it's also just there's an emotional perspective different. There's a life experience. There's all sorts of things. And the more people we can round ourselves out with, the better. I mean, I only know from a middle-class white man growing up in Salem, Oregon, that's been my experience. I'm going to see everything through those lenses. And, some of people, whether it's a different personality or a different gender or whatever, different life experience, it has broadened my perspective into something more rich.
Yeah. And you can't actually empathize, I don't think, with other types of people unless you understand a little bit of who they are or have a connection with somebody that fits that demographic or type or whatnot. I know my own journey as well. Like I've always felt like an oddball because of whether it be my personality, which is part of it. I have some aggressive, I don't know if aggressive is the right thing. I have some personality traits that are often attributed to men if we're going back to like just generalities, just in like decision making and the way I approach certain things. And I always, because of my family dynamic, I was very much the leader by necessity. And so I never really related well with women when I was younger. And then I didn't relate well with men because there was always this awkwardness of male, female. And first of all, it was having healthy female relationships that helped me heal from that and finding women that were healthy and poured into me. And I realized, okay, women can have healthy relationships. I say this because I know a lot of women struggle with this. But there was also the dynamic in my professional world where I related more just because of who was available to men, but then there was this awkwardness. So when that started to change, and you were a part of that, Zach, in my professional world, where I think you worked a lot with women. Yep. You had all women at home, and so there was a more comfortableness of talking about certain things. We share some personality types, so there was some healing there. And what's so funny to me, looking back at my own personal health journey, is I had strong women leaders who had a similar journey as me, who rightfully so in their perspective were sharing with me how to be careful with letting my emotions out, how to hold my emotions in a room, because as a woman, if you're in a leadership position in certain situations, if you show that emotion, you automatically lose credibility and a voice. And so they were very much like, there's no tears in baseball, which has its place in the journey. But it was you as a man in our team who came in with emotions and sharing those openly.
I cry.
Yeah, he cried. He broke down the wall. It's funny to me because it was like not how I expected it to go down. And we kind of had opposite roles in the gender. I don't know if this is offensive, but like in that professional world, in that moment in time where I'm much healthier than I was then, we had kind of the opposite.
It's not offensive.
Yeah, we had the
Keep going.
opposite characteristics you'd expect. But that was healing to me because that helped. Your actual personality helped me to see emotions as healthy in those dynamics and to explore what it looked like to have a healthy relationship. Even some of where we clashed at times in those early years of working together because of our differences, because we had a healthy relationship and we were able to work those out, it really helped me heal and grow as a person, to be honest, as a leader more so.
Yeah. So this you will definitely fail at a lot because male-female relationships, like we said, it's messy, but it's worth it.
And when we say fail, we don't mean morally. We mean fail at having a healthy...
Good caveat.
Yes, okay. That is a big deal and try to avoid that. But we mean failing and having it healthy or being comfortable with it.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yes. So fail forward in a positive light.
Right. You got this.